about these issues, and I never would have done that to innocent little 12-year-old girls.
Did he satisfy you with his answer?
No, he didn't, because it's not enough just to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. You have to get it right the first time, and that's why we have to have a president who understands from the get-go what, with a core sense of conviction, what policies will work for the United States and what won't.
Coming into this debate, you had dropped in our polling 7% if Sarah Palin's not in the race, down to 4% if Governor Palin were to get into the race. Why do you think that happened? And let me add this to the question. In that same poll, Governor Perry was way ahead, and Republicans, 42%, by 42%, Republicans way higher than everybody else. Republicans believe he's the most electable candidate. He would be the strongest debater against Barack Obama. Do you think that changed tonight?
Well, I think day by day there are snapshots that are taken of the campaign. And one thing people need to remember is when the vote was taken from the American people in Iowa, I won the straw poll. I'm the candidate who won. So when the voters had
Mike Huckabee won last time, and he was not the nominee. I know it's a big vote for you, but it's not necessarily representative of what happens in the end if you look back over the years.
But that's the point. We're not at the end. This is a marathon. And if you look at the race 4 years ago, John McCain was in 4th place. Rudy Giuliani was in the lead. Fred Thompson was in the lead. And these things change. And that's why these debates are so important. And that's why I thank CNN for hosting this debate, because I think it's important that the voters get a chance to take a measure of the candidate.
Congresswoman, thank you for your time post-debate. We'll see you again on the trail. Thank you very much. And Anderson, as we toss back, you asked me at the beginning what I thought were the most interesting dynamics. I do think Congresswoman Bachmann knew she had a lot to prove tonight, and she came out quite aggressive. She knew she needed to put some dents into Governor Perry if she was to get back some of that Tea Party conservative grassroots support she has lost in recent weeks. That was her goal. One last point, I would also think Speaker Gingrich, Senator Santorum also turned in strong, spirited performances tonight. The question has been, they've been pretty strong in some of the past debates and unable to move the numbers. Is the Republican electorate looking at this race as Perry, Romney, maybe Bachmann, or is it willing to have a more open mind and let some of these more struggling candidates into the conversation, into their consideration? I think that's one of the big questions we'll have looking at the polling data as we leave this debate and move into the future debates.
John, thanks very much. David Gergen, clearly, to Gingrich, Santorum, Herman Cain got some of probably the louder applause lines of the night. That does not necessarily translate, though, into any kind of bump in the polls. And clearly a lot of folks were gunning, were looking to try to take on Perry. Did they succeed? Did they succeed maybe in lessening his poll numbers a little bit? Certainly we saw that from Mitt Romney. We saw that from Santorum. We saw that from Michele Bachmann.
I don't think so, Anderson. I will tell you that this hall is crackling with excitement. These Tea Partiers love this debate. They like the fact that the other candidates had a chance to get in more evenly. But just as they loved it, there were many who, judging from what's been on Twitter tonight, who are horrified. So the country's still very divided about this. In terms of the dynamics of this race within the Republicans, it's no question that Romney and Perry remain the front runners. Romney has a better command of the facts. He's a more practiced debater, gave one of the best answers of his entire campaign when he was asked how he would balance the budget. But Perry has the command presence. And even though people took shots at him, as you said, he deflected reasonably well. He came in, he was a better debater than he was more even this time. He still talks a lot of Texas. He's going to need to move beyond Texas to get a national focus, and he clearly is going to have to beef himself up on the international side. But I would have to tell you, I think Rick Perry walked in here as a front runner tonight, and I imagine he walked out as the front runner.
It is 10 o'clock Eastern Time. We're live with a special edition of AC 360. The CNN Tea Party Republican debate just wrapped up in Tampa, Florida. If you're just joining us, a lot to talk about: jobs, Social Security, health care, all the usual suspects, but some surprising moments as well, and very pointed and contentious moments. Tonight we have analysis of all the candidates, all the key issues, and we're going to replay some of the key moments from the debate in case you missed it. We're also taking a closer look at the facts that were thrown out in the heat of debate to see whether there was, well, truth to them or if it was stretching going on in Tampa tonight. We're keeping them honest. But first, a look at some memorable moments from tonight's debate. Take a look.
It has been called a Ponzi scheme by many people long before me. but no one's had the courage to stand up and say, here is how we're going to reform it.
Well, the term Ponzi scheme, I think, is over the top and unnecessary and frightful to many people. But the question is, do you still believe that Social Security should be ended as a federal program, as you did 6 months ago when your book came out, and return to the states? Or do you want to retreat from that?
I think we ought to have a conversation.
We're having that right now, Governor.
Yes, sir. If you'll let me
we're running
finish,
for president.
You called it a criminal. You said if people did it in the private sector, it would be called criminal. That's in your book.
Yeah, what I said was...
I'm not particularly worried about Governor Perry and Governor Romney frightening the American people when President Obama scares them every single day.
I've been told by some people, well, you can't get that done. I say, why? Well, because you don't know how Washington works. Yes, I do. It doesn't.
It's easy to turn around this economy. Just have the backbone to do it.
Does Governor Perry deserve any credit for all those jobs that were created in Texas?
Sure. Oh, sure.
Go ahead and tell him how much credit he deserves.
Well, well look, you know, I think Governor Perry would agree with me that if you're dealt 4 aces, that doesn't make you necessarily a great poker player. And
Governor Perry, you were dealt 4 aces.
Well, I was going to say, Mitt, you were doing pretty good till you got to talking poker.
Congressman Paul, you're from Texas. Does your governor deserve all that credit?
Not quite. I'm a taxpayer there. My taxes have gone up. Our taxes have doubled since he's been in office. I don't want to offend the governor because he might raise my taxes or something.
The drug company gave thousands of dollars in political donations to the governor, and this is just flat out wrong. Right. The question is it about life or was it about millions of dollars and potentially billions for a drug company?
It was a $5,000 contribution that I had received from them. I raised about $30 million. And if you're saying that I can be bought for $5,000, I'm offended.
Well, I'm offended for all the little girls and the parents that didn't have a choice. That's what I'm offended for.
As you just heard, Social Security emerged as a hot-button issue earlier in the debate. They were talking about vaccinations there right at the end. Rick Perry has made waves by calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme. The phrase came up again tonight as he and Mitt Romney went head-to-head, each accusing the other of scaring seniors. Back with us live, the Situation Room's Wolf Blitzer moderated the debate. John King, host of John King's USA. CNN senior political analyst David Gergen, also with us, CNN chief political analyst Gloria Borger, CNN contributor Eric Erickson, editor-in-chief of RedState.com, CNN political contributor Paul Vigala, Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary for President George W. Bush, and CNN political analyst Roland Martin. I don't know how many folks we have. I lost count. We just talked to John King. John, there's one particular exchange on Social Security between Rick Perry and Mitt Romney that got a lot of people's attention. We heard a bit of it before, but I just want to play an extended version right now.
But the question is, do you still believe that Social Security should be ended as a federal program, as you did 6 months ago when your book came out, and return to the states? Or do you want to retreat from that?
I think we ought to have a conversation.
We're having that right now, Governor.
Yes, sir. If you'll let me
we're running for president.
I'll finish this conversation. But the issue is, are there ways to move the states into Social Security for state employees or for retirees? We did it in the state of Texas back in the 1980s. I think those types of thoughtful conversations with America, rather than trying to scare seniors like you're doing and other people, it's time to have a legitimate conversation in this country about how to fix that program where that's not bankrupt and our children actually know that there's going to be a retirement program there for them.
Yeah, Governor, the term Ponzi scheme is what scared seniors, number one. And number two, suggesting that Social Security should no longer be a federal program and return to the states and unconstitutional is likewise frightening. Look, there are a lot of very bright people who agree with you. And that's your view. I happen to have a different one. I think that Social Security is an essential program, that we should change the way we're funding it to make sure...
criminal. You said if people did it in the private sector, it would be called criminal. That's in your book.
Yeah, what I said was... Governor Perry, you got to quote me correctly. You said it's criminal. What I said was Congress taking money out of the Social Security Trust Fund is like criminal, and that is, and it's wrong.
John, do you think Social Security's become, at this point, the key hot-button issue or something we'll see coming up throughout the primary?
Without a doubt, and here's why. Number one, If you listen to these Tea Party voters in this room, I was at a luncheon with a bunch of them today. Many of them agree with Governor Perry, and especially with what Governor Perry wrote in his book, Fed Up, and said in interviews just after that. They think Social Security is unconstitutional, and they would prefer a transition where 20 or 30 years from now, it was all returned back to the states. Now, Governor Perry did not answer yes or no tonight when he was asked, is it unconstitutional? He had, because of the political pressure, to write an essay in the USA Today today, and he said it here tonight, that he wants to reform the program, but not touch anything for anyone who's in Social Security now or 5 or 10 years away from the program. Governor Romney believes this is a vulnerability. The challenge is a lot of Republican primary voters, especially Tea Party voters, are more with Governor Perry's position on this. What Governor Romney is trying to prove, he's trying to make the case that this would make Governor Perry unelectable, that in a general election, a state like Florida, a state like Pennsylvania, even a small state but a swing state like Iowa, where you have a higher population of senior voters, Governor Romney's trying to make the case to Republican voters, if you want the candidate with the best chance of beating Barack Obama, a candidate who can be viewed as someone who would abolish or someone who thinks Social Security is unconstitutional is not your guy. Governor Perry, standing by what he says the issue now is reforming it, but look for this to continue on what he said in the book, not what he said in the essay, the fact that he thinks the founding fathers would turn in their graves, that Social Security shouldn't be there. Governor Perry now wants to talk about fixing it, not whether he would support it being there in the first place. This will continue.
I want to bring in just kind of just a round robin, just to get initial impressions of what you heard tonight from all our panelists. Eric Erickson, from your perspective, what are your headlines going to be on redstate.com?
Well, I think this may be the first debate where Mitt Romney didn't come out the clear winner. Rick Perry came in strong, and really I think everyone held themselves till the end, and Perry needed to do well. I think he did well. I don't think that the Social Security exchange helps Mitt Romney at all in a Republican primary. I think he's foolish to continue it. He may want to go after Perry on immigration or HPV, but this is an issue the Tea Party voters, and I think the majority of Republican voters right now, agree with Perry on. And for the life of me, I can't understand why Romney would go with this. Interesting, Bachmann was going to make this a key point against Perry tonight and back down from doing so.
Roland Martin, your take.
If you're a Latino voter, the last thing you wanted to hear was some of the stuff you heard tonight. Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona will be critical states when it comes to November 2012. And the GOP did themselves no favors tonight in trying to curry favor with Latino voters. Also, amazing, education did not come up in this debate at all. So much emphasis when you talk about Social Security, talking about a balanced budget, those sort of issues.
It came up about abolishing the Department of Education.
Well, right. That's the only moment it came up. But frankly, if you're a parent trying to get your kid educated, frankly, not a single candidate offered anything to speak to the crisis we have in this country when it comes to education. So major failure in that not coming up.
Gloria Borger.
Roland,
I think, Anderson, what we saw tonight is proof that this race is really far from over. I think there's an internal fight going on in the Republican Party about whether or not Social Security is constitutional. I heard myself the whole time. I don't think that question got answered by Governor Perry tonight. It's something he and Mitt Romney are going to engage on in the future. And I think that Mitt Romney started chipping away at the economic miracle of the state of Texas. And it's clear he's going to continue to go back at that. He said, you know, when you're dealt 4 aces, it's easy to win the hand. And I remember that.
Ron Paul did that as well. Ron Paul did that pretty effectively as well by saying, I live in Texas, my taxes have doubled.
You know, I remember that happened with Michael Dukakis talking about the Massachusetts miracle, right? And they started chipping away at that, and that was a big problem for him. So again, I think we saw Perry really on the defensive, and everybody on the attack on him. He's going to get used to it.
Paul Begala?
A remarkable study of contrast between Mitt and Rick. Mitt was cool. Rick was hot. Mitt was factual, and Rick was a little more emotional. It was really an interesting study in contrast between the two. And so the real question is, which party? Not who won, but which party? If this is still the party of, investment bankers who carry a putter at the country club, well, then Mitt Romney wins. If it's the party, though, of people carrying a pitchfork to a Tea Party rally, then Rick Perry wins. And certainly in the hall tonight, I was watching on TV, of course, but in the hall, it sure sounded from the audience like a strikingly conservative, really almost radically conservative audience, which only helps Rick Perry.
Although, Paul, wouldn't you say that, Rick Perry certainly seemed to have stumbled on the HPV vaccine issue, certainly at least in the hall, his stance was not popular at all.
This is, in fact, I think, long-term, strategically, the real Achilles heel for Governor Perry. And that is where Michele Bachmann took it. She took it to crony capitalism. She didn't simply say this was anathema to Christian conservatives, although it